In 1st century Jerusalem, he was crucified by the Romans. The Gospels tell us he was buried in a tomb. And 2 days later, Mary Magdalene, one of his closest disciples, found the tomb empty. But according to the Gospel of Matthew, there was another story circulating after Jesus' death. And though the Gospel calls it a lie, it was rumored that Jesus' disciples secretly took their master's body, presumably to give him a permanent burial. If this is true, according to 1st century burial practices in Jerusalem, Jesus' body would have been taken to a rock-hewn family tomb. Given that he was crucified for insurrection, the reburial would have been done in secret by his closest disciples. Jesus' body would have been shrouded and left to decompose. 1 year later, his disciples would have returned, this time joined by his family for the final burial ceremony. Mary, Jesus' mother, would have attended the ceremony. Mary Magdalene would also have been there. His brothers, Simon, Joseph, Judah, and James would have prepared Jesus' bones for the final burial, placing them in a limestone coffin called an ossuary. Jesus' name would have been inscribed on the side. His ossuary would then have been placed in a niche in the inner chamber, sealed away forever, deep inside his family tomb.
Do you want me to send it to you?
What is it?
The name?
Sure. I was just being away. I wanted them to like go over it, you know?
זה היה יום שישי אחרי צהריים, ממש מול החלום של הבית. זה היה אתר בנייה שהתחילו לבנות אותו. כדי לבנות היו עושים פיצוצים בהר, היו מפוצצים דינמיט את ההר, ואז בתור ילדים מסקרנות רצנו לראות מה קורה ואיפה זה. ואחרי שהיה את הפיצוץ וכל האבק שקע, מה שראיתי בעצם רחוק בהר, ראיתי את איזה מערת קבורה, יש שם משולש עם העיגול, וזה היה הרבה יותר מכוסה.
In the spring of 1980, in Tel Priot, South Jerusalem, construction blasting exposed the entrance to a burial tomb. It was 2,000 years old.
Exactly.
הבן שלי מגיע, הוא הגיע בריצה הביתה. אמא, הבונים רוצים להרוס מערת קבורה של מצאו. אז התחלתי להתקשר לכל מיני ארכיאולוגים שחיפשתי דרך הטלפון וזה כמעט לא היה אף אחד. המשטרה כדי לעצור את הפיצוצים. העובדים הלכו הביתה, כי גם זה היה אחד.
On the Sunday morning, under pressure from contractors, a team of archaeologists was called in to excavate.
Using the
They had only
Sabbath.
3 days before the tomb was to be sealed and cemented over.
I could see this large slope with tractors and bulldozers and trucks trundling in different directions, and right in the center of this slope was this
what are the
gaping
chances they didn't
hole,
just blow it
which
up,
turned out
you
to
know?
be the entrance to the Tel
That's
Priot
crazy.
tomb.
Yeah, and for somebody to be there
Above
that
the
would
entrance
actually
was
speak
a
up and say
facade.
something,
I mean, it's just insane. Like, look at that. Like, I could have been lost. I mean, they could have just...
Mystified the
None of this could have been
archaeologists.
found.
There's no doubt about it that those symbols which are on the facades of the Tel Priot tomb meant something. It's unlikely that the person or the family that came to carve out the tomb just carved these things at random. They had to symbolize something. What they symbolized, I don't know. But it's quite rare to find that kind of ornamentation on a simple tomb.
Shimon Gibson, a young surveyor at the time, was one of the first inside. It was his job to record the layout.
It was great. It was very exciting. entering into the tomb, which has been cut into rock. It has a central chamber. It has arcosolia benches in the walls for the laying out of bodies. It has these loculi extending in different directions. It was incredibly important to get as much archaeological detail as possible onto plans.
Gibson's detailed plan recorded every inch of the tomb's interior. Extending out from a large inner chamber were 6 deep cavities called loculi, or kohim in Hebrew. And inside these kohim, the archaeologists found 10 small limestone coffins, also called ossuaries. The ossuaries were quickly transferred to Jerusalem's Rockefeller Museum under the direction of the Israel Department of Antiquities. The bones and remains found inside were bagged and boxed and put aside for reburial.
Certain decisions were made by the Israel Antiquities Authority that they would heed to the requests of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community.
Ultra-Orthodox? These
and
guys.
give over
Ultra-Orthodox.
bone
What does
material
that
which
even
had
mean?
been analyzed and examined by anthropologists for reburial.
And then they began the process of cataloging the ancient bone boxes. By 1980, over
That's hers.
1,000 ossuaries had been found, but only 20% of them bore the names of the dead. Here it was discovered that 6 out of the 10 ossuaries had inscriptions.
They are not monumental inscriptions. They're not intended to be seen and viewed by everybody, and they're not there to commemorate the dead. They are there so that when family members come in and start shifting the boxes around so they can put a new one in, they know which one is which and which belongs to who.
The archaeological record shows that the custom of using ossuaries for burial in Jerusalem only lasted for about 100 years, ending around 70 of the Common Era when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. And so the discovery of inscriptions on stone coffins like these provide archaeologists with a catalog of names specific to the time of Jesus. And on one of the ossuaries discovered in the Talpiot tomb, written in Aramaic, was an astonishing name.
Mike Jones!
Bar Yosef.
Yeshua, or Jesus, son of Joseph. Yeshua bar Yosef. Now, when this was found, I think the archaeologists weren't too excited about it. The public would have been very excited, but they didn't hear about it. You found a Jesus, son of Joseph ossuary? But it wasn't really talked about.
Today, the Jesus, son of Joseph ossuary is in the hands of the Israel Antiquities Authority, or IAA, as are the rest of the stone coffins taken from the Talpiot tomb. Most of them have been locked away and stored in this massive warehouse. But why? We've assembled a team of scientists, scholars, and journalists to investigate the 10 ancient bone boxes and to find out why they've been ignored.
Stop ignoring me, guys. I'm coming over there.
This is it. Felix?
Yeah, this one is 5 This is it.
This is it. Jesus, son of Joseph.
Today, it takes an expert in ancient writing like world-renowned Harvard professor Frank Moore Cross to examine the inscription. Because even though it is one of the plainest ever found on an ossuary, its letters are so informal that it's very difficult to read.
This being quite informal, and this particular one quite messy.
Academics describe it as a graffiti, so cursory it's almost as if it was meant to be read only by intimate family.
There's an X here before the name, and then the name Yeshua, Then the father's name is perfectly clear, Yehoseph, the son of Joseph. I have no real doubt that this is to be read Yeshua, and then Yeshua bar Yehoseph, that is Jesus, son of Joseph.
Jesus, son of Joseph. Professor Cross's examination of the photograph has now shown us exactly what to look for on the actual coffin.
Yud Vav Shin Ein.
Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin, Jesus.
How do you get that from that?
Bet, Resh, son of. Yud, He, Vav, Samech, Pei, Joseph.
Okay.
Jesus, son of Joseph.
It's quite amazing, eh?
Amazing is not the word for it.
Can this stone coffin be linked to Jesus of Nazareth? To answer that question, we have to examine all the archaeological evidence uncovered in this family tomb. Does it fit with Christian tradition? Does it challenge certain articles of faith?
If the bones of Jesus were to be found in an ossuary in Jerusalem tomorrow, and without doubt, let's say they are definitely agreed to be the bones of Jesus, would that destroy Christian faith? It certainly would not destroy my Christian faith. I leave what happens to bodies up to God.
Wow. This guy.
It seems that Christians can accept the possibility that the remains of Jesus were transferred to a family tomb. Thereafter,
They can accept
he
it.
risen and appeared to
They
his
can
followers
accept
as
it,
the
he
Gospels
says.
report. According to Christian faith, Jesus then ascended to heaven. In theory, the ascension could have been spiritual, leaving his body behind. In fact, those who take a strictly historical approach to the Gospels would expect to find Jesus' remains in his family tomb.
When he's first buried, it's in a temporary tomb. And later, unless he somehow magically disappears and goes to heaven, which is a position of Christian faith, but if you're going to be historical and realistic, he was would be put in a permanent place, a permanent place of burial as a good Jew. Okay. Well, the tomb, you have to have a family tomb.
The family tomb of Jesus. If the ossuary found in the Talpiot tomb, marked Jesus, son of Joseph, did at one time contain the mortal remains of Jesus, then all the ossuaries in that tomb would have to belong to members of the Jesus family. On the other 5 ossuaries reported to have inscriptions, we should only expect to find names from the family tree of Jesus. Jesus was the son of Mary and Joseph. But what many people don't know is that according to Christian tradition, he had 2 sisters, Miriam and Salome. And the Gospel of Matthew tells us he had 4 brothers, Simon, Judah, James, and Joseph. His adoptive father, Joseph, was descended from King David. But Joseph most likely died in Nazareth and would have been buried there, not in Jerusalem.
The father. Yep.
Jesus' mother Mary, Maria in antiquity, was also of Davidic descent. But unlike Joseph, according to later Christian tradition, she died in Jerusalem. And within the same tomb as Jesus, son of Joseph, a second name was discovered.
First of all, it's an ossuary.
Look how different it looks.
In Jerusalem.
The ossuary is now housed in the basement of the Israel Museum.
As you can see, the script is very simple. The Hebrew letters that create this name are Mem. Mem is for M. Resh, like R. Yud can be I or Y. And Hey, in Hebrew, it's like H in Latin, English. That makes Maria.
Maria.
And it's one of the rare examples of that name on ossuary in Israel.
Maria, Mary, found in the same family tomb as Jesus, son of Joseph.
And it looks way different than
This
when
be the
that was done in
Virgin Mary's
Genesis.
ossuary.
It just looks way different. Commercial break.
Throughout history, from the first Greek writings of Mark, the earliest gospel, the Virgin Mary's name has come down to us in only one form, Maria. It is a Latinized version of the Hebrew, Miriam.
So Hebrew Miriam.
After Jesus' death, Mary continued with his teachings and must have gathered a large following. In those times of religious transition, Roman converts also began to follow Jesus, and so as her popularity grew amongst his followers, Mary's name was Latinized. That is why the New Testament records her name as Maria. Written in Hebrew, the name Maria is very rare, but it's exactly what was found on the ossuary in the Talpiot tomb. If in 1980, archaeologists had considered, even for a moment, that they had discovered the ossuary of the Virgin Mary, what other family members might they have expected to find next to her?
Look, Matthew. M-T-Yud-Hey, so Matya.
Why does he sound like a robot? Mim
Matya, which
when
is
he says that.
a short form, a nickname if you wish, of Matitya or Matityahu, which is where we in English got the name Matthew.
Matthew. The name, at first, doesn't seem to fit
No,
with
that's
the
just
Jesus
the
family.
commercial wanting to come on.
The New Testament is made up of the writings of 4 Gospels, attributed to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, the evangelist, was a disciple of Jesus, but scholars don't believe he was a blood member of his family. However, there is reason to believe that there were many Matthews within the Jesus family.
I'll tell you something very interesting. There are 2 genealogies of Jesus. Everybody reads the formal genealogy of Joseph, his adoptive father. It's basically all the kings of Israel and on down. Well-known, great historic names. But the other genealogy is embedded in Luke. People don't notice it much. It's Luke chapter 3. You got to turn a few pages. It's Mary's genealogy, the mother. And in her genealogy, guess what? You have 5, 6, 7, 8 Matthews. Matthias. It's a Maccabean, Ashmonean name. It's a fierce name of a sort of a kingly family. It's a priestly name. You remember, Mary is related to Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, who's a priest. So she's got some priestly connections there, as well as Judah, which is the tribe of the Davidic Messiah. So I don't think it's odd that we would have a Matthew in this tomb at all. In fact, it's sort of one more congruence and fitting together.
In fact,
And there was like 5
unlike
ossuaries that didn't
Matthew,
even have names on them.
Many biblical
That means Mary
names,
definitely
like
had
Isaac
more
or
children.
Jonah, would have virtually disqualified the tomb as the Jesus family tomb, because they do not appear anywhere in Jesus' genealogy.
There isn't a single name that doesn't fit the gospel story. Each name in the same tomb connects. Every single one of these names is gospel related. There isn't like any name like Daniel or something else. It just doesn't fit.
He could have given a better example, like Eric or
On
something.
3 ossuaries, 4 names had been uncovered: Joseph, Jesus, Mary, and Matthew. And then on an ossuary found deep within the tomb, another name was discovered.
This inscription says Yosa, with a hey in the end. It's a diminutive of Yosef. There is no question about it. As an ossuary
That one looks pretty damn
inscription,
good as well.
This would probably be quite unusual.
If I'm publishing in English, I say, okay, there's a Joseph. There's not just a Joseph. It's Yosei. Now, in Hebrew, Yossi in Israel today is quite common. Yossi, Joseph, like Joey. But Yosei you will never hear. And you didn't hear it in the ancient world either. The Yod, the E becomes a Yosei. Guess where we know that name? In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus has a brother. People don't all know that Jesus had brothers. Most scholars, the Roman Catholic Church says they were cousins, and other people they were stepbrothers. But most of the historians and the biblical scholars have pretty well now admitted that Jesus had brothers. They're named in the Gospels, the four brothers, James, Joseph, Jude, and Simon. But the Joseph in Mark, only in Mark, our earliest Gospel, it's not Joseph, it's Yosei.
Yosei, or Josie in English, was the brother of Jesus. But the Gospels don't tell us much more than that. He disappears after 3 brief citations. What happened to Yosei is a mystery. But if the ossuaries from the Talpiot tomb belong to the Jesus family,
We can use all those
Yosei
characters.
has finally been found. Of all the ossuary inscriptions ever discovered, there is only one with this unique spelling of the nickname Yosei.
Look, clear as day, it's Josie.
Yeah,
And that's an incredible thing, because according to Jewish law, if someone has a nickname, you have to put their nickname on their tombstone or casket. And it's the nickname that appears here right next to Jesus, son of Joseph. The brother was known as Josie, not Joseph, and it's exactly in the same configuration right here. Josie, Yosa.
In 1980, archaeologists were cataloging ossuary names in lists of hundreds. And from this tomb, they now had Yosei, a rare nickname given to the brother of Jesus. Maria, a rare Latinized version of Mary used in the Gospels to refer to Jesus' mother. Mattia, a version of Matthew that, as it happens, was common in Mary's family. And Jesus, son of Joseph. All found together in a family tomb, all cleaned and cataloged, all bone material reburied together, here in an especially consecrated grave outside Jerusalem. All the ossuaries were then crated and stored for decades on warehouse shelves. Why didn't anyone take notice of these names?
You got to remember that the 1970s and the early 1980s was the boom period for the excavation of tombs in and around Jerusalem. So there was suddenly enormous quantities of ossuaries being brought back to the Rockefeller Museum, the headquarters of the Israel Department of Antiquities. And these inscriptions were deemed to be common.
These are the most common names among Jews in the first
Look at that fat head.
Common Era.
These are exceedingly popular names in the period.
All the
For 100 years
is that
only.
there is a cluster
That's
of
all we
names
have.
that resemble
I mean, it's just crazy.
many of the names
Jesus.
that we find in the New Testament.
I
The other
just-
fact is that we find these names in many other places. So suggesting that this tomb was the tomb of the family of Jesus is a
Well,
far-fetched
nobody's saying that. It's just a
suggestion,
possibility,
and we need
and
to
it
be
gets
very
more and more
careful.
likely the more we.
All the
look
tombs
at it.
around Jerusalem, unfortunately, with construction, are slowly getting exposed and in some cases destroyed. So it's not so far-fetched that a construction crew would have uncovered the tomb of Jesus. I mean, it can happen. I think we have to consider it.
While the statistical probabilities have been argued, they have never been examined by statistical experts until now. Andrei Feuerberger is a professor of mathematics and statistics. From ossuaries and other sources, he's gathered every name known from the time of Jesus. By noting how often each name occurs, he can statistically evaluate the names discovered in Talpiot.
One of the things that's fairly interesting about this particular tomb site is that from a lay point of view, if one looks at the specific names that occur in the cluster, and if one focuses just on the names individually, one can very well come away with the impression that there's nothing the least bit unusual about this particular cluster. But the correct way to analyze this is to look at all of the names in unison.
According to statistics, if we were on a crowded street in ancient Jerusalem and called out the name Jesus, 4% of the men would most probably answer. If we were to call out the name Mary,
only 4%.
25% of the women would probably respond.
Damn.
They were both common names. But what Feuerwerker explains is that if we were to call out for a Jesus with a father called Joseph, a mother named Mary, and a brother called Jose, the odds that such an individual would respond are quite low.
From a statistical point of view, we don't actually look at the incidences of the individual names, where we say that each one of them is a very common name. We look at the way in which the factors combine with each other. So, sure, a father by the name of Joseph is not a rare name. A son by the name of Yeshua is not a rare name. But when you combine those two together, it's rarer. So it really is a possibility that this particular tomb site is in fact the one of the New Testament family. It is a possibility that I think needs to be taken seriously.
Taking the possibility seriously means that we must try to uncover more evidence. And one way to do that is to find the Talpiot tomb. But more than 25 years ago, the tomb was reburied, sealed, and cemented over. A huge complex of apartments was built on top. Even if the tomb can be located, it may well be impossible to get into it, sitting under meters of concrete and foundation. Poring over architectural plans decades old and cross-referencing the IAA archaeology reports, our team believes they've discovered the underground location of the Talpiot tomb. The Talpiot site is perfectly situated halfway between ancient Jerusalem and Bethlehem, the two cities most important to Jesus and his family. It would have been an ideal location for his family tomb, considering that surviving members would have traveled from both cities to visit the burial site.
They would have carried his body.
Think about it, it's perfect. It's right between Jerusalem over there, where Itai is, and Bethlehem is over there. This is where, if I was a member of the Jesus family, this is where I would want to be buried. Okay? So we know that there's a tomb right over here.
Silly, right?
Our research shows that in 1980, two tombs were discovered on the Talpiot site. The roof of the second tomb had been partially destroyed by construction, but it was sealed up again and not excavated because of time constraints and pressure from religious groups to keep it undisturbed. The archaeological reports show that this second tomb is 20 meters north of tomb number 1. The apartment blueprints show that tomb number 1 is located under a patio and beside a bedroom wall. This, we believe, is the tomb.
I love it. They're like, it's underneath this apartment complex.
Now,
It's
we
so
know that
insane.
One of the tombs
Like,
is under
what the
patio.
heck?
We know that there's pipes coming out. That's where you come in.
Crude IAA sketches suggest that both tombs may have had access pipes installed before building continued above them. It's common for pipes like these to be added at the request of rabbis in response to the Orthodox belief that spirits need a clear passage from the tomb.
Yeah.
We're gonna go down however many feet it is till we hit bottom. I mean, and once we're down there, if the drawing is accurate and we've got that curve in that pipe, the camera's gonna go down the curve, we're gonna see what's there.
My concern is that those pipes are bogus. That whoever built it just built pipes there to make rabbis happy. Oh yeah, the souls can move, and there's nothing there. Ideally, you stick your camera down that thing.
Yes.
Confirm that there is a tomb, that there's a space in between the tomb and the bedroom, if you will. I don't know how deep it goes. We cut a hole in the bedroom wall. Boom, we were in there.
Okay,
let's do it, and let's do it fast. Neighbors getting interested in what we're doing.
We've obtained permission from the tenant to give us access to the Tapia apartment we pinpointed in the blueprints.
You know, I can't believe anybody would live over Pluto anyways.
We've only been given 2 days.
Come on.
This is it. This is it. Yeah, this is it. Listen, we need a tape measure.
That one.
This is the real thing. Look at this. We're at 7 feet, 8 feet. Some resistance, but that's not the bottom. There's more.
What's blocking it?
This isn't a dummy part.
Bill Tarrant is our expert with probe and remote-operated cameras. Even if the access hole is as small as 1/4 of an inch, Bill can get a camera inside.
Find the hole, Bill.
This is the video probe. Very light. You can see your face in it. Look how clear that is. See, the camera's in the tip. The light's in the tip.
Yeah.
We're gonna see wherever this camera's pointed. That's what we're gonna see. What can it do? It's articulating. It'll move in all directions. That'll be able to keep us in the center of the pipe so that
My
we can
gynecologist
actually
used
see
to
what
wear
we're doing.
those.
Okay.
Very good.
So I'm gonna center it and I'm gonna insert it into the pipe.
I would have to ask him. I'd be like, OBGYN.
Okay.
Paper's rolling.
Let me take a look. So watch it with you. I'll move the camera as we go down. Try to keep it in the center. See how we're going down? Still pretty clean. We're moving down. We're down about 10 feet.
No debris.
What's that color change? It's changing color because it looks like they use different colored pipes when they put this thing in.
How long is your camera?
25 feet.
Oh, I see something.
Not good. Not good. See that there? It looks like some sticks.
I see plastic and I see some
Not good.
wooden pieces, some debris or something.
You know what? This is a pretty serious blockage you got here.
People throwing trash and stuff down.
I think people are reluctant to think that you could come upon the Jesus family tomb. And yet, there's Caiaphas, the priest who had Jesus crucified. His tomb was found by a bulldozer south of Jerusalem a few years ago.
In December of 1990, construction workers uncovered an ancient burial cave from the 1st century. Inside, there were 12 ossuaries. 2 of them bore the name Caiaphas. This one, the most ornate ossuary, has the inscription, Joseph, son of Caiaphas, carved into it twice. Joseph, son of Caiaphas, was the high priest of the temple, who, according to the Gospels, prosecuted Jesus. From his point of view, Jesus was a dangerous false Messiah who was leading the Jewish masses into a confrontation with Israel's rulers in Rome.
The Caiaphas ossuary was found. So it's not as though no famous, you say, well, it couldn't be anybody. No matter what we find, couldn't be anybody important. Why not?
It seems to me there's a double standard. You said that Caiaphas is, in all probability, the high priest who prosecuted Jesus according to the Gospels. Whereas this entire cluster is dismissed, well, this is just common Jewish names. I mean, how are you so convinced that this is the Caiaphas?
You find more ossuaries in that same tomb, less fancy, with the name Caiaphas, not Joseph, son of Caiaphas, but with the name Caiaphas on it. So it's definitely the tomb, as all tombs were, of a clan. This is the tomb of the Caiaphas clan. One of them could have been, should have been, Joseph, son of Caiaphas, the one that we know from the New Testament. And the adornment on the ossuary shows you very clearly that it is of a different standard.
God.
So,
because they had more money.
Declaration convinces you that this is the Caiaphas of the...
Caiaphas is not that common name. It's not common name as Jesus, Joseph, John, or Mary. It is a rare name. It's a name that we know from both Jewish sources and from the New Testament. and it is good in dating and timing for that period, and it could be that one. The fact is that we have never found anywhere else an ossuary with the name Joseph, son of Caiaphas, anywhere else.
On the other hand, you have
Yeah, and he says the right
bunch
time
of
and
unique
everything
things.
too. So
Yosa, which you find in this tomb, and that specific variation of the name you only find in the Gospel of Mark as a brother of Jesus. Only in this tomb, no other, as rare as Caiaphas. In fact, rarer, because in the Caiaphas family tomb you found several Caiaphases. Yosa appears once, period, out of all the thousands of ossuaries that have been found. Yet nobody says, in all probability, that's probably the brother of Jesus of Nazareth. Nobody does that.
The fact that the probabilities in Caiaphas are very high does not say in all certainty that this is the one. There was no inscription inside saying, I have crucified Jesus. We don't know for 100%. We never know for 100%.
what a
archaeology.
dick.
I love the back and forth though that they did though. That was great.
But the experts do seem 100% comfortable connecting some ossuaries directly to famous names in the Gospels, as long as they steer clear of the Jesus family. At the fifth station on the Via Dolorosa, the path Jesus walked carrying his cross, we find a dedication to Simon of Cyrene.
The one who helped him carry the cross.
It is here that there was a moment both historic and intimate between Jesus and a man called Simon. According to the Gospels, Jesus stumbled en route to the crucifixion, and Simon, who was visiting Jerusalem from Cyrene, helped him carry his burden.
Yeah, the Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan.
No, I don't think so. I think he was Jewish, or Hebrew at least.
Simon and his son Alexander became early followers of Jesus. Experts agree that their ossuary has been found. Strangely, it sits ignored under an archival shelf in the back of a university building.
Well, we have a nice ossuary that was found in 1941. One of the inscriptions clearly says, Alexander, son of Simon, Alexandros Simonos.
That one that's clearly incised is right here, Shimon. You can see it very clearly.
Right, Shimon.
And apparently the chalk, which is on the other side and is essentially faded, does have the two names, Alexander at the top, Simon below, which would indicate that both of these individuals were put in this ossuary.
On the lid of this ossuary, the place name Cyrene in modern Libya is inscribed.
Simon of Cyrene is mentioned in the New Testament helping Jesus with carry his cross. If scholars have generally agreed this is his bone box, this is it, then this is one of the most important artifacts in Christendom. Why is it sitting under somebody's table?
Part of it is that it was found many years ago, in 1941. That was long before there were even popular magazines on biblical archaeology for the layman. So it escaped the popular attention.
You have to have a publicist. You have to have somebody that says, boy, this is something, let's put this out, right?
So it ends up sitting in a storeroom.
It ends up sitting in a storeroom. Maybe we'll be able to see that green charcoal if we get the light over here on this and be able to read it this time. Okay.
Some more.
Oh, good. Yeah, bring that over. Oh, look at this. Simka, come here. Look at this. Forget the green for a minute. Look. This is incised.
Oh my.
I don't think that's published. It's not published, is it?
It's not in any of the publications.
On the ossuary of Simon of Cyrene, the man who helped carry Jesus' cross, we found the same symbol that is carved over the entrance to the Telpiot tomb, the tomb that housed the ossuary inscribed, Jesus, son of Joseph.
Come on.
I mean, I've never heard this anywhere.
Look, I'm in shock.
Wow. Well, I didn't expect it. I was trying to read the green letters. I wasn't looking for signs of early Christianity.
Signs of early Christianity. Is this a symbol that predates the cross? Is it possible that the symbol marking the Talpiot tomb became the symbol of the Jesus movement. It is if the tomb belongs to Jesus and his family.
Nothing, look, nothing. It's not
What
going
if you would
anywhere.
give it? Did anything move?
And,
Smash
it's
it.
plastic.
You know, Simka, I'll tell you, it's a very serious blockage.
We're at the point now, I think we gotta call on a plumber.
We're gonna break into the tomb with a plumber.
You got a better idea?
Itai! We need a plumber.
Now? No, nobody will come now. It's almost 9 p.m.
So call him now and bring him
My
tomorrow.
uncle would come.
This is crazy.
Start with the plumber. What else we gotta do?
Ooh, that baby girl.
Over 25 years ago, archaeologists discovered 4 ossuaries linked directly to Jesus and his family.
There it is.
Then, on a 5th ossuary, they uncovered another inscription. The inscription has 2 parts. The second part reads Mara, while the first part is a diminutive of Mariamne. And although no one had ever seen this name on an ossuary, it was translated as just another version of Mary. Mary, also known as Mara. But would it make sense to find in the Jesus family tomb 2 ossuaries with the name Mary?
It looks like it's written from left to right.
Maria, the name used in the Gospels,
Rather than from right to left.
Mother. And the second, a unique spelling of both Mary and the name Mara. It might make sense if the second Mary, this Mariamne, was Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene comes down to us in the New Testament as not just a name, but a name and title. According to scholars, she is Mary from Magdala, Mary Magdalene. Magdala was an important trade center close to the Sea of Galilee. The people from Magdala would have spoken Greek as well as Aramaic.
Yep, there it is.
Christian traditions suggest that Mary Magdalene and her brother Philip were preachers to the Greek-speaking Jews. And it's quite likely that Mary Magdalene's family and followers would have written her name in Greek. The Mariamne ossuary is the only one found in the Talpiot tomb with a Greek inscription.
Greek inscription.
Let's say in this very tomb of Talpiot, the second Mary was clearly identifiable.
Which
as
means it is
Mary
written from
Magdalene,
left to right.
let's say. What would be your reaction then along with, inside this cluster?
It would be fascinating and certainly draw much more attention and raise many more questions, but it isn't. We don't have Mary of Magdala in that tomb.
If
Why are you so quick to dismiss
Oswald
it?
had said Mary Magdalene, I would say wow. And I would be a lot more impressed.
Be written Maria coming from Migdal or Maria Magdalena, I would say very interesting.
If the Mariamne inscription could be connected to Mary Magdalene, it would be more than interesting. It would be statistically compelling, because we could create a combined probability equation for the Talpiot cluster that includes Mariamne.
What happens when you do that is that the individual probability factors, even though they're not terribly small in any one particular case, when you multiply them all together, it actually starts to build up a picture that the overall thing that you've seen is actually a very rare event.
Because Feuerberger takes a conservative approach, He eliminates Mattia altogether, since he is not a known member of Jesus' immediate family. Feuerberger also divides the probability outcome by 4, so as to compensate for any unintended biases in the historical data. And he further divides the number by 1,000, representing all 1st century Jerusalem tombs. By the end, his model concludes that there is only one chance in 600 that the Talpiot tomb is not the Jesus family tomb, if Mariamne can be linked to Mary Magdalene.
So there's a 599 chance
But can
out of
she?
600 that it is.
One of the most famous tales associated with Mary Magdalene is in the Gospel of John, where Jesus stops the stoning of a woman punished for adultery. But there is no indication in the text that the unnamed woman is Magdalene. It's a later Christian tradition that has linked the adulteress to Magdalene.
That's the problem with traditions.
Just as it has linked her to the tale in Luke of another unnamed woman specifically labeled a sinner who anoints the feet of Jesus.
No, there's no way. Magdalene was already working with her then at that time.
Drying them with her hair. Today, scholars believe that Mary Magdalene and the 2 unnamed women in Luke and John are all different women. The tradition of linking Mary Magdalene to these so-called sinners can be traced back to a turnaround in the church of later centuries, when women were excluded from being consecrated as religious leaders. Previous to that time, women were ordained. And in many early Christian writings, Mary Magdalene is highly respected as a missionary.
I think that Mary Magdalene was an extremely important person in the Jesus movement. So important that I think, this is my opinion, I know I'm not representing anybody else in this, but I think that she actually is the real founder of Christianity.
Mary of Magdala was a major apostle on a par with Peter at the time of Jesus. But later, after the New Testament, we say she's a prostitute. So the opposition to Mary of Magdala inside the New Testament and after the New Testament is the surest proof for me that she was very, very important.
The strong leadership displayed by Magdalene would have been regarded as suspect by an evolving, male-dominated church. So from the 2nd century, when church fathers began suppressing dozens of early Christian writings, the church rejected 2 texts that held Mary Magdalene in highest regard. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and a text describing her brother's ministry, the Acts of Philip. For centuries, only fragments of these texts remained, and some sections had been considered lost forever.
That Jesus got smashed up pretty hardcore. Looks like Popeye or something.
In 1974, in an ancient monastery on Mount Athos in Greece, a Harvard University professor, Francois Bovon, uncovered a 700-year-old manuscript. It was the most complete copy ever found of the 4th century text, the Acts of Philip. In it, Beaumont claims to have discovered an early description of Mary Magdalene, unmarked by later Christian tradition.
In the Acts of Philip, she is completely, there is no mention of her previous life. She is seen positively as a Christian missionary. So she is completely at the same level as male missionaries. She preaches, she teaches, she baptizes, she carries even the title apostle.
If in the early Christian movement Mary Magdalene was an apostle, then the unique alias Mara on Mariamne's ossuary
She was the first apostle, as far as I'm concerned.
In Aramaic, Mara means master.
Yeah, it is at the
Ma,
end, and in the
the
A,
master.
it goes from the
Even
A.
today,
The
if you
little
go
piece goes from the A
to the
down.
Armenian quarter, the archbishop or one of the priests would be like Mar Samuel or Mar whatever, Lord, Master. You can still hear it. So it's a sign of respect for a rabbi, for a teacher, related to the Mara, the Lord, the Master.
It is clear in the Acts of Philip that Mary Magdalene is respected as a preacher, baptizer, and apostle, strong and faithful, and close to Jesus. It would make sense then for her followers to refer to her as Mara, Master. But what about the spelling of the first name in the inscription, the unique Mariamne, never found before or since on any other ossuary? In the Acts of Philip, Mary Magdalene's name is spelled M-A-R-I-A-M-N-E. Mariamne.
Mariamne is the same woman as Mary of Magdala or Mary Magdalene in the Synoptic Gospels and in some non-canonical texts like the Gospel of Mary, Pistis Sophia, etc.
Right there, come on.
The Acts of Philip seem to explain all the mysteries behind this inscription. But if this is really the ossuary belonging to Mary Magdalene, then there's one more thing that needs to be investigated. The common held belief, based on medieval tradition, is that after the death of Jesus, the disciples were expelled from Judea and scattered to many lands, traveling and spreading the
Looked
word
like
of
a
God.
cast on her arm or something.
After some time, Mary Magdalene ended up in France, where she spent the last of her days. Following this later Christian tradition, it would be impossible to discover Mary Magdalene's coffin in Tel Piot, Jerusalem. However, in the Acts of Philip, written in the 4th century, the oldest known account of Mary Magdalene's travels, she does not die in France.
According to the Acts of Philip, at the end of the story, Mariamne is said supposed to go home to Israel, to the Jordan Valley, and the author has an allusion that's where she would die and be buried.
The Acts of Philip clearly tell us that Mary Magdalene, Jesus' most trusted apostle, dies here in Jerusalem. Would it really be that implausible to find her buried beside Jesus in the tomb of the Jesus family?
I don't think so.
The statistical probabilities are compelling. The cluster of names in the Talpiot tomb, extraordinary. The connections to the Gospels, too strong to dismiss. Armed with this new knowledge, our team may now be able to uncover new clues inside the Talpiot tomb. If we can just get inside.
Let's hook up our stuff and see what he did.
Okay, so let's see what we got now that we've got the plumber cleared it all out for us.
This
Put it on ass.
I still dread the idea that maybe the blockage was the bottom of it.
It's about 14 feet. Here's the blockage. We're at the point now where
Yeah, and it's not the bottom, which is good.
No, we're still going.
No, it's
now.
not the bottom. That's good. This is deep. This is really deep.
20 feet.
You're already 20 feet down?
You know, we're
That's
coming
great.
down.
Look.
That's the bottom, I think.
What is that? Can you see the bottom, Phil?
Either we hit another blockage or we're at the bottom. I'll move the
So
camera.
what happened to? I thought it's supposed to curve.
I'm gonna switch the camera. Let me pan around, see if we can find something.
We don't see anything.
I'm panning left.
I saw it. Yeah. There it is.
There's an opening.
There's an opening. Absolutely. There it is.
We're there.
We're in the tomb. We got the tomb. We're right in front of the facade.
We're in.
Oh my God.
There it is.
That's a tomb. That's not.
Wait a minute.
Oh my God. You know what? That's not the entrance to the tomb. We're in the tomb. You're in the tomb. Yes, absolutely. No, that's it. It's the tomb. All right, here. This is one sec. It's the tomb, man. We got the tomb. We found our tomb. But where's the gable, Itai? You know the gable, there's kishut me'ala. What? I think that's it, isn't it?
Is that an ossuary?
Wait, that's ossuaries. Those are ossuaries. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness.
They can't
There's
be our
good news
tomb
and
then.
bad news there. An ossuary there.
Because all the ossuaries were taken out of the other tomb.
Yeah.
Well,
What does that mean?
it means we're in the wrong tomb. Our tomb is empty. So, what are we gonna do? It's the wrong tomb. The wrong tomb, right?
You know what? This may be the second tomb.
Correct.
This may be
The one we thought was 20 meters north. We're in the second tomb.
Right.
Our tomb is 20 meters south of here. Good news is no one's ever seen a tomb from the time of Jesus in pristine condition.
The only tombs
Although
you'll
we
find like
found
that are from the
ourselves
time of
in the wrong
Jesus.
tomb, perhaps these
Supposedly.
finely crafted ossuaries, so close to the Talpiot tomb, are somehow connected to Jesus or his followers.
Hey? So what's next? We gotta find the tomb. The Holy Family tomb.
Gotta be looking 20 meters south.
It's gonna be on the other side of this building.
It's this way. Where are you going? Where the heck are you going?
Yeah, he's climbing out of the roof.
That's the parking lot. Shouldn't be a big deal. South is south. 20 meters takes us in the garden. 20 meters is not much. We're okay.
In 1980,
What,
the
what are you
IAA
What are you thinking?
I'm just like,
cataloged 4 of the 10
I
ossuaries
really
from the
think that
Talpiot tomb
she
as
really
bearing
was,
no names.
like, she really was.
But these
even,
ossuaries
like the way
were
that
far
her
from
writing is
plain.
on the ossuary. I mean,
Several
I
displayed
looked up
ornamental
like the line
rosettes on their
underneath, and by
sides.
then, for that, like to be
And on the
done like
rear
that, it
panel of
meant
the
like
ossuary
divine, you know,
cataloged
like something more.
80-506,
So I
they
mean,
found a large cross mark.
Okay, look at this. Look at it, Felix.
Some kind of mark. It looks like a cross to me. It looks like a cross.
That's a Mason's mark, though.
But this cross mark was immediately dismissed as a Mason's mark. It is theorized that Mason marks were scratched onto ossuaries by the coffin carvers as signatures, or marks indicating how lids should be aligned to boxes.
This one has nothing to do with Christianity, it's just a scratch, it's very common, it's just a sign of the Mason, I believe.
And that's because crosses simply aren't accepted
saying
as
that
crosses.
I produced
Christian
it and
sense.
it belonged
On
to
any
me.
archaeological
Maybe
remains
it was
dating
even
before
before
the 4th century. The common belief among archaeologists and historians is that there is almost no archaeological evidence of early Christianity until the 4th century, 300 years after the death of Jesus. This is when the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great legalized Christianity, essentially allowing an underground movement acceptance into general civil society. Its popularity exploded across the empire, and Constantine became known as the first Christian emperor. But it's hard to believe that an early Christian movement, strong enough to last 300 years of persecution and then sweep the Roman Empire, would have left no archaeological evidence of its existence before its legalization.
You know what? I noticed out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
A cross inside a circle. What is that?
That's great. I love that question because this is not a cross. This is 4 centuries before the cross was established as a Christian symbol. This is a rosette, the most common design on ossuaries of the 1st century. Other ossuaries have also crosses on them, but there are masons marks to fit the placement of the lid to the box itself, to prove the point that the cross was used as a Christian symbol in 1st century. You need much more evidence than one poorly executed rosette.
Today, the cross is immediately associated with crucifixion. But that is a reference that would have been horrific during the years directly following Jesus' death.
For anyone in the 1st century to wear a cross around their neck would like someone today wearing a little electric chair. It was disgusting. It was a symbol of torture. And it was only when crucifixion was stopped that the human imagination was able to move from the reality to the symbol.
I can wash them.
But perhaps people did use crosses as religious symbols at the time of Jesus. Crosses that had nothing to do with crucifixion.
In the Bible, Ezekiel, there's a place where God says, go to the city.
Yeah, that's fine. We can turn it off. You want to press stop for me?
Mm-hmm.
Just press stop on the far left.
Okay. Oh.